Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 11. He wasn't surprised that he woke up feeling better today. After all, the skies were cloudy and gray, and a light drizzle was souring the bright day that was there yesterday. He successfully made it to school without having to talk to anyone, and once he got there, no one seemed to notice him. As he walked through the halls, he could hear a whisper without a voice telling him that his childhood is leaving him, and just faintly, barely noticeable, the voice said if he didn't cry, if he didn't let it out, he would forfeit the rest of his childhood, and the sun would never shine the same way again. Porter was through with that soft crap though. Everybody turned his life into a therapy session. Everybody acted as if they knew what it was like to lose something that had been keeping life so much fun, so promising and bright. He looked out the window to the gray sky in the grand foyer of the school. A mother, his mother, was everything that word meant, and she died, looking for him. 2 + 2 = 5, right? Porter was snapped back into attention and thought life was revealed to be one big joke, a fleeting thought. He opened his shiny new math textbook and tried to pick up where everyone else was. "I know you guys are going to get tired of that joke," Mr. Whelm said. "Killed at my last school, though." "Mr. Whelm?" Pat asked. Mr. Whelm nodded. "Can we have partners for homework this week? I don't understand what to do. This is too hard for me." "Glad you asked, Pat. Okay, everyone that needs help on this week's assignment can partner up with a friend or classmate. If you think you have it down, you could turn in your own work, okay? Is that okay with everyone?" The class said yes, together. He was walking down the hallway to his next class when someone tapped his shoulder. He looked towards it and saw a beautiful girl. It was like seeing her for the first time. It was like he noticed his heartbeat for the first time in months. However, he gave her a blank look and kept his same pace. "Do you blame me?" Inez asked. "No, it was my fault." "No, it wasn't. It was my fault. We are too young to be going out that late at..." "Just shut up, Inez. I left the house. I rode to the university and she was looking for me. Not you, me. It's my fault. No one can take that away." He realized he was screaming and that he was crying. There wasn't any shame, but he knew that now he'd remember his words, and they weren't as comfortable as he would have thought. Yet as soon as Inez wrapped herself around him, the comfort threatened to distill his guilt. But it didn't. It was like home, more so than his room had been for the past year. "Yeah, he's strong," Porter answered. "And your brother?" Inez asked. "I think he's having a tough time, but he hasn't given up or anything." Porter and Inez were sitting under a tree in the corner of the playground. It was an intimacy that Porter had never felt. The sky was still gray, but there was something going on that reflected what he felt. Inez had a way. "Any new music?" she asked. "Oh, I've just been listening to acid jazz all the time. Good stuff." "Sad songs?" "Yeah." Porter smiled at Inez and they laughed. "At least you're predictable. My mom says that to my dad all the time." Lunch had ended and Porter went back to class feeling much better. However, as the last 4 classes passed, he felt more and more aware that with relief in his life, there was still that empty hole that ran throughout all the parts of himself that he was aware of. Porter decided to walk on the wet sidewalks all the way home. The bus was too busy, and he felt he needed to occupy his brain rather than being on a bus of loud kids. The homes on the street looked comforting, their stories fainter even with his powerful imagination. The orange glow of the lights inside through the blinds or fabric curtains signified that there was a place for someone, for a family, and that the war hadn't taken everything away. A deer was slinking through a front yard and looked at Porter for a moment and then bounced back into the family's backyard. The rabbits were out too. They were the brown ones with white spots. Porter remembered from class that black rabbits used to overrun Fount in the first days of establishment. They were hunted for good luck because during those times, There was a sort of spiritual rebellion against religion. About half of the survivors from the dissolve believed they were in the times of God's punishment against humanity, and the other half held the view that the plague was due to any number of natural reasons. As the dichotomy evolved, some went far enough to write a code on luck, and so killing black rabbits was an important ritual for bringing up good luck. In Porter's day, it was very rare to see a black rabbit, and even some citizens still argue whether they should be protected or killed. Porter was now a block away from his house. The familiar maple trees looming low on the horizon was a vista with its origins from his earliest memories. He barely noticed them. Instead, he looked around at the neat houses to see if any kids were playing in the yards yet. Bruce was always tossing the baseball with Drew, his older brother. Porter supposed they were cool, but they were a bit weird. Their parents wouldn't let Bruce or Drew talk to some of the kids on the edge of Dearden. Yes, lots of them liked to smoke cigarettes and drink beer, but very few of them were about committing senseless crimes. As Porter thought, Dad had warned him against hanging out with those kids too, but not to the extent of outright shunning them. As Porter crossed the street and stepped from the curb, he had to step over a flow of water trickling down the slight slope into the sewer's opening. He looked east, and sure enough, Mr. Evans was watering his lush lawn with his pastel sweater and khakis. Porter smirked as he thought about how hot his wife was. Everyone knew it was because of his money and family, and that was also why no one said anything to their faces. The mailman, Chris, was turning the corner from Porter's street and walking the boys' way. Chris was wearing his woven sun hat and a red, sweaty bandana around his neck. Porter noticed that he had on a new pair of shades. They gleamed sapphire and shone like mirrors. Chris nodded at Porter, and Porter waved. Chris walked up Miss Stein's walkway, and Porter walked by trying not to make eye contact because Chris was prone to strike up a conversation just to be polite. Chris was still inserting the mail as Porter huffed past. Porter turned down his street and immediately saw Dad get out of the old gray car with his head down, looking tired and just beaten, in Porter's opinion. Porter's throat clenched involuntarily for just a short instant, and he had already stopped walking. He watched as Dad stopped right in front of the side door and snatched off his Irish cap. His huge shoulders dipped and rose a few times, and then he lifted his head and walked in the house, shutting the door slowly. Every time he saw Dad trying to press on, Porter could feel a part of himself that was there impeding Dad everywhere he went. He was effectively shoving his mother's dead body in Dad's face all day long, whether he was thinking about it or not. But it was already settled. There was no way he could face Dad right now. He had to go somewhere that would make him forget, even if it was just for 5 minutes. He turned around and made his mind up that he would take the 35 to downtown Dearden. Just then, he felt the day dim, literally. He guessed the sun may have dipped behind the maples, or a cloud passed, or he was just feeling like crap. A large group of pre-mid school kids were walking toward him, and this usually meant a possible ribbing, but Porter could recall none of their faces or guess what type of kids they were. He had shed the fear of being smaller, but that came at the price of less peace. The boy got off at Lily Lane and Nadia Road in by Scheller's Cafe. The bus would be free until 8 p.m. because of the official holiday, Dr. Rose Boyd Day. Dr. Rose was a clinical researcher at MIT in one of the worst eras of the dissolve. Over 100 million had died and society was crumbling. However, she stayed in her lab through the best and the worst, looking for any way to slow down the dissolve, and just months before she died of the disease of herself, she finalized a treatment that allowed people to survive by reducing the inflammation caused by the plague to almost benign levels. Porter had no point of reference for the magnitude of Dr. Rose's life, but had written at least one report on her in his school career thus far. Porter was caught up in the view of a 30-something couple, both in tan trench coats, walking hand in hand. They looked like they were incredibly rich, but not from their clothes or the woman's jewelry, really a lack thereof, but because they didn't have a care on their faces. They smirked as they talked sarcastically with one another and didn't pay any mind to their surroundings, and it made Porter aware of a yearning for such freedom. However, he didn't have any words for how they made him feel. He just didn't feel good. Porter could see the comics shop from the corner. It was up a slight hill and on the first floor of a new apartment building. The glass shimmered blue in the light of the sun, and he could only catch a sliver of Manta Man in a vinyl display decal. He barely had any money on him, even though he had hundreds saved up in a lunchbox at home, just in case he finally decided to run away. Honestly, Porter could not give a damn what comics the shop had, but it was the only place where he could be distracted enough for that goal of 5 minutes. He heard a group talking behind him. They sounded like teens, loud and laughing like hyenas, the kind of kids you love to hate. Porter made the choice to keep standing right in the middle of the sidewalk while he decided what he was going to do or where he was going to go. It didn't take long for one of the bigger kids to bump and then shove Porter to the ground. Porter's backpack tangled around his right elbow as he got up and pushed the rather tall teen in the back. "What's your problem?" Porter spat. The teen turned around and smirked at a friend on the right and then smirked deeper at Porter. "Learn to get the hell out the way when you see your elders, squirt," the teen said evenly. "You don't own the sidewalk. You're such a loser picking on a little kid," Porter said, looking the teen square in the eyes. "Yo, kid, watch your damn mouth. This ain't your little suburb, okay? Kids come up missing." The teen and his friends laughed. Porter felt a twinge of fear, but that just made him angrier. "That might be true, but you don't do the dirt. You let your boyfriends handle that," Porter smirked. The large teen nodded and rushed Porter, grabbing him by the throat. The teen surrounded Porter, and they all shuffled Porter into the alley behind Schellers. The teen released him, but he was encircled. Porter thought that this could be the end, and he felt deep shame because he wasn't going to stop attacking until he was killed. Weirdly enough, all the teens did was stand and stare. Porter looked at their faces and knew he was going to get his skull cracked, but he rushed the teen that he had the issue with, but he easily turned Porter around and hooked the boy's arms behind his back and held him. "Fight me, you bastard," Porter yelled. "You gotta hold me like a... Let me go and you won't get another." "Hey kid, we're just screwing around. Calm down, man," the teen said with a funny sense of compassion. "Let me go." The teen pushed Porter back in the center of the circle. Porter was standing in a small puddle of rainwater and his socks were beginning to soak, but that was secondary to the teens. He was so pissed that his fists were trembling. One of the other teens stepped forward with his hand out in a gesture of trying to calm the boy down. "Hey man, we're sorry. We were just having a little fun. Jack, Ben, step aside. Let him go." His friends made way for Porter to leave. Porter stood there for a moment, half expecting a trap, but he thought he'd better get on the next bus home. He had a feeling Dad might be getting worried soon. Porter fixed his backpack and walked out the alley without looking at the teens. They had genuinely let him free. Porter remembered that cigarette he had that time with Hector on the other side of town before the bombings. He felt like trying one again, but Dad went crazy on him that time, and it would be tantamount to betrayal to pull something like that. The bus stop was lit with a bright halogen bulb, and Porter sat on the green grated bench, still trembling and confused from the exchange with the teens. They were just leaving the alley and walking up the hill in a subdued manner. They probably knew Porter was right there, but none of them looked over at him, and it was just an awkward situation the more Porter looked at them. So he looked the opposite way down Lily and tapped his knee rhythmically to a song he heard on the radio last night that was stuck in his head as the day got even dimmer. Porter reached his side door at 6:30. He felt raw from this odd day. He didn't want to see Stan or Dad. He just wanted to lie in bed and listen to the radio until he fell asleep. He knew he had a massive amount of homework that needed to be done, but would count on an extension or not. He really couldn't care less. He finally found the right key on the ring and unlocked the door. He walked into the side foyer and smelled alcohol. Dad was having a few Pilsner Pat beers after work for the last few weeks. Porter couldn't tell if they got him drunk or not, but sometimes Dad would have this stupid smile he gave Porter while holding his beer, and the boy felt embarrassed for him. Porter looked to the left through the dim kitchen, and sure enough, Dad was in the office with a beer on his desk in front of him. The man was just staring at the bookshelf in front of him in thought. Porter stared at him, and Dad must have sensed him because he turned his head and saw Porter staring. Porter waved and Dad nodded. They looked at each other for a moment. Porter hooked his backpack straps with his thumbs inside and then went for the stairs. Porter walked to his door and then looked down the hallway at Stan's. There was no light nor sound coming from the cracks of his door. However, Porter knew he was home because his car was there and he could just feel his brother there in his room. Porter tossed his backpack in his ancient teddy bear chair and kicked off his scuffed up sneakers. He fell on his bed, belly down, and just let his eyes shut. He thought about the calm of the present war. He thought about Inez. He thought about the fight he almost got in, but as he ran through all these situations, he felt out of touch because his house was always so damn silent.